The views I express today are purely my own. They're not those associated with the organisation with which I work. But I'll tell you my view, which is the world is being disrupted. The current view of globalization, what we call globalization, started in 1971, and according to Harvard, it stopped in 2012. Globalization is fractured, it's broken, whether you call it Brexit, Catalonia, whether you look at what's happening in Europe, whether you look at NAFTA, the US, or in Asia, the world of globalization is fractured. And you may say, well, look, that's fine. That's the same cycle as we saw back in the 1920s. But it's not fine because it's different this time. Because look at the competing pressure for globalization from China. The Belt and Road Initiative depends on a globalized world. $900 billion has been committed to infrastructure along the Belt and Road, but it only works in a globalized world. So we have on the one hand the fracture, on the other hand the demand. If we look at banking, put your hand up if you've got a bank account. Oh, I'm pleased. Okay. Who wants greater ease of access to their money? You know, mobile apps, things like that. Who wants greater ease of them to access their money? Wonderful. Who wants banking fees to reduce to zero? Okay. Who wants greater security? Well, we can't have it all, right? How do we balance the desire for ease of access with greater security? And I think what we have to understand is the systems that worked yesterday don't work today, and they won't work tomorrow. We have to break free. We have to secure the supply chain. We have to enhance the efficiency and security of the work that we do. We have to break free of a nation-state regulatory model because it doesn't work on the blockchain. We have to think differently about commerce around the world. And if we don't think differently, in my view, Kim, we won't be able to achieve what we need in terms of the efficiency of the supply chain and the security of global commerce. We have the idea of a nation state, of a border, of a barrier, of a tariff has gone when it comes to commerce. The supply chains in today's world run from bauxite mining in Ukraine to distribution of Mercedes in America. And they are in the virtual world. If there's a problem along the chain, there is no jurisdiction, there is no regulator that can touch the movement of the Mercedes-Benz cryptocurrency because there's no central bank that manages it. There's no regulator of the blockchain. They tried to set one up, but it didn't work. So as we move to a decentralized world, a world without regulation, a world without border, a world without boundary, where Alibaba's commitment to deliver goods and services around the world to 2 billion people means that they need a supply chain which is efficient and trustworthy. And what they're doing about it is they're not taking modern regulation, they're not taking modern courts or modern laws. What they're saying is within the blockchain, we will code in our own law and regulation. So within the blockchain, the movement of the product or service across the world, and whether you call it, you know, Belt or Road as a supply chain, or blockchain, or hash graph, or whatever you want to call it, as the goods or services move through that chain, the chain will decide liability. If it arrives late, the chain will debit and credit the rest of the chain. Now that's quite interesting because you're suddenly coding in your law and regulation into a computer. But what happens when it goes wrong? What happens when the computer doesn't know the answer? Well, the current model, which is subsidiary regulation, which is being worked on a lot out of the US, is that the owner of the blockchain then decides the problem. So if it's a public blockchain, Ethereum would tell you what the right answer was. What happens then? What happens if they don't know the answer? Well, suddenly this virtual supply chain pops into a domestic court. Now, Dubai has launched the Courts of the Future Forum for a reason. Because the courts of tomorrow have to do something very different to the courts of today. Mm-hmm. A judge today needs to know a lot about the law in construction, in supply of goods. A judge tomorrow needs to understand coding, What's gone wrong in the coding of this supply chain? Why hasn't the coding that was embedded allowed for the supply of goods and services along the chain in an efficient way? And so we've got to start thinking from a regulatory model, from a legal model, that we are in a world without boundaries, we're in a world without regulation, and we're in a world without any central bank looking after the cryptocurrency. And that, I think, is both terribly exciting, but also slightly nerve-wracking. Brick and mortar will exist at a retail level, that is, a customer who wants to deposit funds into their own account in one jurisdiction.
50 years from now.
Absolutely. You'll be accessing it from a device, but it has to exist at a retail sector. For global commerce, 15 years, we will have no single banking unit which will control the supply chain of goods, services, and money. But the concept of people stealing data is one of the reasons behind cryptocurrency. The idea of Bitcoin is that it's decentralized, sitting on thousands and thousands of different servers, all of which are mining coins in order to hold on to the data. So it's far harder to hack Bitcoin than it would be to hack a traditional bank. That's the view. So I think as we move forward, the concept of security will be much more comfortable with it. But in terms of jurisdiction, it will go away. There will be no physical jurisdiction because I don't know whether any of you are citizens of Asgardia. Has anyone become a citizen of Asgardia yet? Not yet. Well, me and a few friends from the Dubai Future Foundation have signed up. We're citizens of Asgardia. Does anyone not know what Asgardia is? No. The Kingdom of Asgardia. Well, they've put a satellite in space and they've put a server farm on it. And you can become a citizen of Asgardia. You can have a passport, you can have identity papers, you can set up a company, and it's in space. Now, I say it because it's flirtatious, but it's flirtatious with something that's going to happen, which is people will be of no defined geography. There will be no regulator that covers what they do. They will exist but not exist. It's like the Matrix. And so a lot of debate now is going on about who regulates the blockchain. And if you go back to the early days of the internet, do you remember they said, who will regulate the internet? Mm-hmm. And the people that set up the internet said, no one will regulate the internet. The whole point of the internet is you shouldn't regulate it. But then they realized that over time you have to have some regulation, and we have ICANN, I-C-A-N-N, mm-hmm. which is the regulator of the internet. And what I foresee, and this is why I believe Dubai can play a pivotal role in establishing it, but the regulator of the blockchain, and I'm talking about the public blockchain, the regulator of the blockchain, the ICANN of the blockchain, is something that I think we should set up here. I think we've got the vision to do it. I think we've got the Dubai Future Foundation who's thinking in that direction. I think we're the only city in the world that is as advanced in thinking in this area. So we could have in this city, not only the courts of the future, but the first ever regulator of the blockchain. And at that point, I think we quite rightly hold our position as the #1 city in the world when it comes to the future.